is pick the one thing you want to be really good at and be really good at that. And if you can start to win repeatedly doing that, you'll be playing more offense. The mistake that I see people make, and mistake that I've probably made in the past, early stage of your cycle, trying to cover too much territory.
Right.
Like having 5 products when you should be focused on 1. Focus on 2 customer endpoints instead of 1. Pick 1. And by the way, if you don't think you can be big enough in 1 and that's why you're going after 2, then you should really be questioning like what you're doing to begin with.
All right.
Awesome.
Thanks for joining me.
I'm thrilled. It's gonna be fun, Jeff. Yeah.
Well, let's start from the top. Tell me about Revelair.
Love talking about Revelair. So
Your favorite topic.
it
right?
is my favorite topic. You know, when you've been driving a company for near 8 years now, it does become your favorite topic. Yeah, so Revelair, we're a data and analytics platform supporting insurance companies and people who provide care, so doctors and health systems. We provide them with a platform so they can succeed in value-based care. There's a lot of talk nowadays about value-based care and this shift away from a payment model called fee-for-service, where you go and see a doc and they bill you with no incentive or real plan to make sure that you actually stay healthy.
Right.
Yeah, so that's what we're all about.
Where does the name come from?
Name comes from, we went through a rebranding of the company back in 2019 as we were shifting from a tech-enabled services business to SaaS, and we wanted a name that kind of stood out as a software company. Effectively kind of comes from 2 words, reveal and steer. And so with our platform, we're revealing insights to those who use it, and we're helping steer them to taking better care of their patients.
And how do you guys kind of separate yourselves from everybody else out there?
First off, the way we separated ourselves was providing a software model versus a tech-enabled services model. And so we compete with a lot of traditional called BPO players that use a massive amount of headcount offshore to mine and understand what's going on, all this clinical data that we have our hands on. Number 2, we built a broader platform so we can solve a number of problems that are critical to payers, the insurance companies, and the providers. And so we play in kind of 3 main areas. Quality improvement, the way health plans and docs are regularly audited to make sure they're doing a great job. Risk adjustment, where effectively everybody has a health score that sits over their head that defines how much money they're paid each year. So we play across those 2 areas, plus we also help enroll members into MA plans. We have a broader offering. We solve broader set of problems, and we do it with software.
Now, your background, you've been in a lot of growth companies, so you definitely have that kind of operational growth experience. What's one thing that you've learned with this ride of yours at Revelair that's been a little bit different than you've seen in the past?
I think that learning from being at Revelair is healthcare is super complicated, and it moves at a different pace. The unique number of people you can sell to is actually fairly small, but if you can solve a problem, you can build a company of the med scale. Go slower, a smaller number of endpoints, but you can build something sizable if you deliver great outcomes.
Okay, let me think about that. That's interesting. Tell me more about going slower. Most people don't want to hear that.
Well, I know. Look, you don't. I mean, it's a hard thing to go slower. I think you just have to brace yourself for the fact that it just moves at a different pace. And so I could probably pull up board deck after board deck from 16, 17, 18, where we were missing numbers each quarter. It's always fun going into a board meeting when you miss the number. Well, we knew we were onto something. We knew we were building an application and a platform that could have a big impact, but you'd engage with a health plan, you get them to say yes, and you might then spend 6 months just to do contracting. After you've gone through the 6 months to get them to a yes decision. And then you might end up with an executive change that throws you all the way back to the starting line. They like to, health plans and people in healthcare, they like to dabble, they like to do pilots, but implementing at large scale takes a lot of time.
You're not new to AI. This has been something that you guys have been doing for a while. Everybody's talking about AI right now.
Oh, everybody's talking about AI and Gen AI. I hear from people in our board advisors every day about a new company and like, why aren't you doing what they're doing? But yes, we've been.
They're not really doing it yet.
No, but the stories are good. And look, I'm sure some of them are going to do fantastic work. But yes, we've been at the AI kind of game or journey since 2018. We first partnered with somebody that could bring us some of that capability, and then in 2019 we started to build out our own set of, our own team, our own set of resources.
And where are you guys leveraging AI?
Well, the first place that we were leveraging it is around the way clinical data comes into our platform. And so for us, that traditionally means a PDF medical record. Believe it or not, a lot of data still comes into us as a PDF. And last year, we ingested close to 880 pages of clinical data that, effectively comes in as a PDF. So we're able to read that and understand exactly who that record's for, the provider that they saw, and the data service. And that just drives a lot of efficiency in terms of how that kind of comes into our system and gets attached to the right, identified to the right person. And now we're using it in areas that we can start to predict A is true and B is true in terms of what's going on with their health, then C is probably also taking place, and to highlight that for a provider when they come in to see their doc. And that's where it becomes super cool.
Right. I kind of want to go back to how do you present to your board when you hit numbers? I didn't want to miss that. I mean, like we can't always hit our numbers,
No.
right? Like almost everybody that I work with is doing something that hasn't been done before. We're building products that haven't existed, right?
Yeah.
But we need to create this predictability, which is really challenging. So how do you manage when you're off course?
Well, first off, one of the learnings I had probably in 2020 was I had two board members with really different points of view of how they saw the budget. I had a traditional venture investor that, hey, you're swinging for the fence every day, every week, every month, every quarter. So they saw the board plan as a bit aspirational, or not a bit, like definitely aspirational. And I had another investor that comes in a little later in stage. I wouldn't call them growth equity, but kind of between venture and growth equity.
Okay.
And their numbers are take it to the bank numbers.
Right.
And it wasn't until they put a chart in front of me that showed how I had missed my number over 5 straight quarters that I realized the disconnect between two board members.
Right.
And it drove a great conversation about what did the budget mean, and it got us on the same page around it. I mean, I would say we're definitely in the stage now that we put aspirational numbers out there, but we expect to hit them. And so if we're missing them, then there's definitely a conversation of like, why do we miss it? And did we not predict something that's going on? Did we not execute properly? But we just had our board meeting last week, and I was thrilled to be able to tell our board that with Q1 in the books, we were almost 40% above plan. So that made for a pretty fun and easy.
Yeah, those are more fun meetings, right?
Yeah.
What position do you feel like you are with the company right now? Do you feel like you're on the defense, or do you feel like you're on the offense?
That's an awesome question, because I think about that a lot. Like, is the wind to in our face, is the wind to our back, and we're definitely playing more offense now than we've ever played.
How do you define offense?
Yeah, so I think what does offense look like? Offense looks like, hey, we can invest earlier or in advance of some hires we're looking to make. We are feeling good about our position in the market, and that allows us to take greater control over pricing. It allows us to maybe take a risk here and there around a customer that we see some opportunity with. Might not be the ideal customer profile, but we think it'll move in that direction. But if you're playing defense, you might not want to put the resources against them. Yeah, so we're playing a lot more offense right now. I think that's a result of us feeling the wind to our back and the way customers are responding to our value proposition. The economics of our business are really good right now, so we have excess dollars at our disposal to make some bets.
Yep.
To make some hires earlier than planned.
I tell a lot of people, like, the difference between an earlier stage company and a growth stage company typically is just different number of zeros, right? You have more capital, but you have more people. You might have more bets, but you probably have more risk. Right? Everything just escalates what you're doing. How do you think like earlier stage companies can put themselves in a position to be playing offense?
is pick the one thing you want to be really good at and be really good at that. And if you can start to win repeatedly doing that, you'll be playing more offense. The mistake that I see people make, and mistake that I've probably made in the past, early stage of your cycle, trying to cover too much territory.
Right.
Like having 5 products when you should be focused on 1. Focus on 2 customer endpoints instead of 1. Pick 1. And by the way, if you don't think you can be big enough in 1 and that's why you're going after 2, then you should really be questioning like what you're doing to begin with.
Sometimes 1 can lead to 2, to lead to 3.
Yeah.
Right. Then
Yeah.
you can take a path.
Yeah.
But it has to be
Where
a
like all of a sudden there's a natural kind of stepping point over to it.
I want to talk a little bit about go-to-market in healthcare and how that's changed. In a lot of organizations, changed just because of the pandemic. How have you seen it change?
Yeah, I'd probably call out a few changes around go-to-market. It's no longer kind of how do you sell, it's how do you support a buyer's journey. So I'm a big believer in that the buyer's coming in reasonably informed of what they're looking to do or the pain point they have. And as soon as when they first engage with you, they've probably done 30 to 40% of the homework already.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to kind of recognize, support that, and be an enabler to them and not a hardcore seller.
Right.
So that's kind of first is just kind of a general point. Around healthcare pandemic, it has dramatically changed the payer landscape. And I say that because for most payers, if you worked for Blue Shield of California, you lived in California.
Okay.
You went to the Blue Shield of California office or offices and they would not hire you out of state. Pandemic, people began to move out of state. We all kind of read about that in lots of industries. Now you got all these insurance companies across the country with people that have moved away, executives that have also moved away, and they've now decided that that's not essential. And so where that changes the buying process, it's really difficult to get on site with them. Mm-hmm. Even though some are back in the office, we deal with a large national player right now that there's probably 15 people in the buying decision cycle, and those 15 people probably live across 5 major geographies.
Mm.
And we have struggled to get them all together in one place as we try to find a way to get in there, build a rapport and build a relationship in person, to do some of the work that you would typically do around aligning on a vision, kind of mapping out how our solution solves their pain points, how it slots into their workflow.
Right.
And so now we're still doing a lot of that over Zoom. Team's quite good at it, but it's a different experience. It's not as intimate. It's not as personal.
I think it's hard on salespeople too. Salespeople thrive on that relationship.
Yeah.
And they thrive on that energy of going somewhere and going after that deal and reflecting on the buyer's journey. That's almost it changes the persona of those people probably too. What do you guys look for?
It does. Although I'm going to call out. So, the end of Q1, we were trying to close an opportunity with somebody who had said yes. They're already doing business with us. It was a significant kind of piece of growth, and we kind of couldn't get the final signature. So we put 2 people on a plane, sent them to where 2 of the 3 key executives lived, and they landed and said, "Hey, I'm in your backyard." And they did it in a way that was respectful, but
right.
We didn't get it closed. But it was a good learning opportunity for our salespeople.
Right.
And it did advance it and actually help in building a relationship with the customer just by knowing we were willing to kind of go that far to be of assistance as we worked to get it done.
Right.
But to your question about how does it change the profile and the persona, those who are successful in this more hybrid and remote environment are super creatives. They're analytical because they're trying to deeply understand the people they're trying to connect with,
right,
in a way that's genuine. Not like, hey, I noticed you went to Connecticut College. I drove through Connecticut.
Right. My stepmom's aunt.
Yeah.
I went to school there.
Yeah. I look at the people on our team that are thriving in this environment. They're still good relationship builders, but they know how to do it in a way that's different.
Now, you guys are product heavy.
Yeah.
As far as like product management, your product function. I find that really interesting. And most of the companies that I work with that are product heavy are usually leading their market with their product. It's really obvious to me that where they put their energy, you know, what do they say? Where the energy goes, maybe in this case, product flows.
Yeah, I like that. I like that one. We are product heavy. I guess in part because our product's really complicated. To be able to tackle what we're tackling with software, we have to take our product and break it into a number of discrete components so we can wrap product managers around it. So when I talk about our 3 suites of quality improvement, risk adjustment, and member management, you can't really put one product manager over that. We have 11 technical product managers that work on discrete, complex, important parts of our solution that sit under those 3 suites.
Yeah.
So we have a clinical product manager. We have an interoperability product manager. You hear a lot of talk about interoperability in healthcare, and we think we're kind of leading edge in what we're doing there, and in no small part because of the focus we put around it. We have a provider gateway product manager, which is just about the way this handshake takes place between payers and providers. They love each other and they loathe each other, and they find there's a lot of friction in those exchanges. So we're heavy, and we've built out now over time a customer experience team that's been fantastic in us getting really critical necessary feedback to make our product more delightful and elegant. And I think, we want to say an elegant piece of software, even though it's kind of an industrial strength tool.
I'm kind of going back a little bit of an earlier conversation, but building a company around unit economics.
I love that topic.
I thought you would.
Yeah. I was part of a company a long time ago that was PE backed from the start, which is not a normal way for a company to get birthed. But we were birthed with a lot of PE backing from phenomenal investor General Atlantic. There was no focus on unit economics. It was growth at all costs. And then this is in the .com kind of bust. And all of a sudden, our world flipped on its head overnight. And it was all about generating profit. And we were not prepared to do that.
Right.
Had this COO who shifted overnight, and every email from him was in bold red letters.
Oh boy.
And they were going to stay that way until we turned net income positive. So we got a lot of red emails. And anyway, that was kind of an awakening moment for me about understanding kind of unit economics and profitability.
Yep.
And from the day I stepped in here, I said we were going to be good stewards of capital. We were going to focus on unit economics, even while burning cash. We would know what that runway looked like to get to profitability. We weren't going to be a company that just signed whatever you could sign and then kind of hoped one day that you'd wake up and the business would be generating cash. And those unit economics put us in a great position when the market kind of turned a year and a half ago.
Right.
While people were scurrying to figure out how to downsize and tighten the belt, that was a non-event for us because we ran the business, in a way that was sound. It's put us in a position to play more offense now, while others are still playing a heck of a lot of defense. Yeah, and we share the metrics with our team every month as part of our all hands. So our employees have pretty good understanding of unit economics. Our extended leadership team has a good understanding, and our leadership team has a very good understanding.
It's interesting because some people would assume that this only happens in early stage companies, but I always find oftentimes there's a disconnect between the KPIs or the numbers that we want to hit at the end of the year and OKRs. OKRs build capabilities within the organization, right? Like you have your KPIs, that's what you want to hit. OKRs, objectives and key results, are what can we do to actually hit those numbers and build this repeatability within the business.
Yeah.
In earlier stage companies, I do think it's more prevalent that financial plan, what they're going out to raise capital, disappears inside the organization after the capital is raised. It comes back up every month or every quarter when they need to go talk to the board again, but they lose that tie, or that what I refer to as like an operating system in the business, that connection of OKRs and KPIs and meeting cadences and staying on course.
Yeah.
I see it at the later stage companies as well. Why do you think that occurs so often?
I don't know. I think there's probably a couple of things come to mind. I think in earlier stage companies, look, you're moving at a frenetic pace, often under-resourced, and so it's easy to kind of forget about something or say you're going to come back to it. And putting in place KPIs, and tracking them daily, monthly, quarterly takes a lot of rigor and discipline.
Right.
We're really excited that we generate a report every single day that tells us the amount of revenue generated the day before and our rolling 4-week gross margin. And for me, I thought we should do that and could do that. And I remember reading a story about Howard Schultz where he could walk into his office and know exactly how much money every Starbucks around the world generated the day before. And I figured if he could do that, or they could do that at Starbucks, we could certainly put that kind of discipline in our small little business.
Right.
So we've been disciplined and kind of focused on that, but it's taken a lot of work to get there. I think people get distracted on it. It's hard. 2, there's a thing like when you're overperforming on your numbers, you can choose to forget about them. And then when you're way off plan, like you can choose to forget about them. You're like, you know what? I don't want to know how far off my plan I am every day.
Right.
I'll just reset the plan next year.
Oftentimes people kind of pause to like actually start the process because it is an iteration. The first numbers that you want to start tracking may not be the right numbers.
Yeah.
But if you don't start that, you can't iterate on that. And I think a lot of people get lost in that. You guys are definitely much deeper in the process. You probably can double click onto some of these numbers and break it down even farther. But I do feel like sometimes teams get a little apprehensive when starting the process.
Yeah. Well, look, it's a good call out. We've been at it for a while, and we regularly sunset metrics or KPIs that don't mean anything.
Right.
Or we've discovered that one is far more important and need to focus on it. So we don't pride ourselves on having 25 pages of metrics. We try to pride ourselves on having the right metrics. You made the comment about OKRs versus KPIs, and I agree with you around a couple of things you said. Like the KPIs are the ones that tell you exactly how well you're doing today.
Right.
And are you on track in what you're trying to do today? OKRs for us are aspirational in nature, and if we do those right, we're setting the business up for the next couple of years. And so when we set OKRs, we don't expect to hit all of our OKRs. Generally, I would tell our company and our team members, like, of our OKR targets we put out there, we should be trying to hit 60, maybe upwards of 70% of them.
Yep.
If we're hitting more than them, then we're probably getting a little cautious in, how we're trying to kind of set ourselves up for the future.
Yeah, I typically, with teams based on their size, will set them every 90 days or every 180 days. Larger companies might even do it, annually, at least at the objective level. But one of the things I think is most important, OKRs or KPIs, is I think you need to set context. And what I mean by that, and you mentioned it earlier in this conversation, are these really ambitious goals or are these like baseline goals? And the team needs to know, are they ambitious and we have to hit them? Or are they baseline and we have to hit them? Or are they baseline and if we go above that, it's great. And I think setting that context helps the team because you mentioned you can even have board members that are off or not aligned on what a number means. And then internally in the organization, I see that in leadership teams all the time. What was our ARR or MRR number? And the head of sales has one number, the CEO has a different number, and it's not even the number that they presented to the board. But once you have that number and you align to that number, setting context to what that means, I think is really important for the team.
Well, I would say setting context is probably one of the most important jobs of a CEO. And so context around these numbers is super important.
All right. So I have one last question for
you.
And so this could be the most important question to ask you. So brace yourself. You were trapped on a desert island and you had a boom box, because we're going old school. You got a boom box and you could only, and it has unlimited batteries. So you're never gonna run out of batteries with this boombox, and you could only bring one album with you to listen to the rest of your life on this desert island. What album are you gonna bring?
Oh, man, that's hard. I think I'm gonna say one group, but if it's one album,
go ahead. One group song.
Well, I would say I'm gonna say Bruce Springsteen. But I'll give you the album. I'll say Born to Run. I find that gives that album gives me a ton of energy.
That's a great album.
Yeah,
that's a great album. I mean, all those other questions were easy. I get to the.
That was like the hardest one we had on this ride here. Like, wow, you didn't give me that in the pre-read.
All right, well, thanks a lot for joining me.
Hey, thanks for having me.
It was fun. This is gonna be a really hard left turn.
I'm impressed that you're about to make this turn. So
Well, I was like, okay, does this guy want to come down here or what?